Beloved Community Talk.
Good evening, good evening, good evening to each of you, my brothers, sisters, and family on this planet. I am Brittany Packnett Cunningham. I'm an activist, an educator, and a writer. And it is such a gift for me to be able to moderate this incredible conversation tonight. For those of you who have come to Beloved Community Talks before, you know that I am sitting in the moderator's chair in the stead for Dr. Bernice King, who is on a much needed and I should add much deserved sabbatical. We are glad that she is taking the time to restore and to take care of herself, because as Audre Lorde reminded us, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So we're glad she's engaging in that radical self-love of taking that break, and I'm more than happy to take the reins for this week. If you joined us last week, you were here for the first part of our conversation of understanding the pain and trauma associated with being Black in America. I say associated because being Black is not a sin, it is not painful, it is beautiful. But far too often, this country of ours decides to make it something painful instead of what it should be, which is full of joy and power and promise. So tonight, we're going to have a conversation about understanding the pain and trauma of being Black in America with Black women. And we know that as Black women, we are a container for so many conflicting and contrasting emotions all at once, that we are just a couple of hours away from Senator Kamala Harris making history, stepping onto that stage as the first Black and first South Asian woman to be a nominee for a major party's vice presidential role. She'll be stepping onto that stage tonight to debate in the midst of a global pandemic to try to help us understand what their vision for the future is. So we've got that high coming, but we're still dealing with the tremendous low of hearing the outcome from the grand jury in Louisville, Kentucky, and watching a Black man named Daniel Cameron decide that there would be no accountability for the life of our sister Breonna Taylor. That we watched just this Saturday, some of us, as Meg Thee Stallion, our sister in arms, who herself has been recovering from an incident of domestic violence in her very public life, stand up and speak truth to power, speaking Breonna's name and talking about protecting Black women and Black people. And all at the same time, we stand here today knowing that Derek Chauvin, one of the officers who helped kill George Floyd, made his $1 million bail and was released from jail on today. We're holding all of those emotions and then some, all in one container, trying to figure out how we hold on and how we press forward. And our goal for this conversation is to provide insight not only into the pain and trauma that we experience through the lens of Black women, but to speak to the hope and the power that we have to persist anyway. We'll get some historical context, some modern storytelling, and we'll hear from some incredibly brave and powerful women who will inspire us toward our next step. So I'd like to start off with our first two guests, whose names we unfortunately know because trauma visited their doorsteps. Miss Allison Jean is the mother of Botham Jean, who was murdered after an officer erroneously entered his apartment where he was resting. And she has continued to support other families Miss Jean has during this fight for change. We've also got joining us Miss Valerie Castille, who is the mother of Philando Castille. Philando, of course, was murdered during what should have been a completely routine traffic stop. And to honor her son, she started the Philando Castille Relief Foundation to support families impacted by gun violence and to do something that was incredibly important to Philando himself, to end child hunger in schools. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us this evening, for having this conversation, and most importantly, for choosing to harness your power even in the midst of your pain. How are you both doing tonight? Ms. Jean, I'll start with you.
I'm just holding on. It's a very difficult time, and the month of September just ended, and it was a particularly difficult month because it was the month of Botham's birth his death.
Mm.
So he died on September 6th, and he was born on September 29th.
Mm.
So the entire month has been a month of pain.
Mm. Well, we most certainly share your grief, although we know that a mother's grief is unique, and we are grateful that you are giving us some of your hard-fought wisdom this evening. Ms. Castille, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm as well as can be expected, dealing with the trauma that I suffered for the last 4 years. And like you stated, right now, four of the more national murders by police were done right here in the state of Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Chavez made that $1 million bail today, and the National Guard have been called out. I don't know what it's going to look like later on, but they were gathering at the governor's center downtown Minneapolis.
Hmm.
But you cannot recover.
Hmm.
It's one tragedy after another that is so difficult to even recover.
Yeah.
So I am doing well, with my faith. So
amen to that. Amen to that. That is the thing that continues to bring us through. Amen to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it is so important because these national stories will flatten the people, the sons that you loved. That when somebody becomes a hashtag, they become nothing more than the story of what took them from us instead of their full and beautiful humanity. So, Ms. Jean, I'll come back to you, and then Ms. Castille will end with you. But I want to hear about Botham and Philando, who they were, what they cared about, how they shined through their humanity. Tell us the stories of each of them that we can't tell just from a headline or a hashtag. Ms. Jean?
Yeah, well, I get scared every time there's a new hashtag that we have to add, because Botham was killed in 2018, and given the murders that we've seen in 2020, a lot of names have been called, and in some cases Botham's name was left out. But Botham was this loving, caring, intelligent, fun, active young man. He was very, very spiritual, was active in his church, a worship leader, loved to sing. But most of all, Botham loved, he had this soft spot for people who were vulnerable, the indigent, the poor, kids at orphans, delinquent boys. So this is what he did while he was alive. When he was at Harding University in Searcy, Arkansas, he took a team of students to our country, St. Lucia, every summer. And he did that repeatedly until he also came in March as well, in the spring. And he just took them to the delinquent boys' home. He took them to the orphanage. He went out to the elderly, the senior citizens' homes. So he just had that outreach for people, for the marginalized, for the poor. And so Botham's death was really catastrophic to me, because I didn't know him to be ill. He was in the prime of his life at 26 years old. He loved a good time. He was the life of the party. He brightened any dark room. As soon as he walked in, he just gravitated to people, until this woman who thought that she had more privilege than he did came into his apartment and shot him right through his heart. That has been very devastating to me. But even worse yet, like Valerie was saying a little while ago, the privilege that these people believe they have took her even further to file an appeal after she received only 10 years in prison.
Mm.
So although she was convicted of murder, she only received 10 years, which I would refer to as a slap on the wrist.
Mm.
But yet still, she feels that she should not be convicted of murder and has filed an appeal on the grounds that she was acting in self-defense.
My God.
So the way I could respond to that self-defense is she was the only defense that she was acting against was the color of my son's skin. That was the threat and that was the risk
Yeah.
to her.
My God. Miss Castille, tell us about Philando. Who was he?
Philando, that was my little baby. I had him for 10 years alone. He was the only child for 10 years.
Mm.
And he was the type of kid that, I always go back and refer to how he had a difficulty with the language. And it took him a while to speak. And I had asked God why, and God told me he's learning the language. And my son was the son of God. And I'll continue to say that because he was just so special. He was a very, very bright kid. He did well in school. I never had to ever defend my son's behavior at school. I defend him more now as a man, as a murdered man than I ever had in his living life. We're all spirits going through a human experience.
That's right.
My son found his niche in life, and that was taking care of children, making sure they had a meal to eat every day. And if they couldn't pay for it, he paid for it out of his own pocket. He started working when he was 13 years old because Jordan sneakers came out. Mom, I want a pair of those sneakers. I said, hey, boo, I tell you what, I can meet you halfway. Because ain't nowhere in the world I'm going to spend $90 to $100 on no sneakers, and you can't eat them after you get done wearing them. I said, So he started working at a very young age, and he was gainfully employed until he was denied his right to live. My son was stopped on record 50-something odd times. That's what the data says. So if he was stopped on paper 50-something times, he probably was stopped 70 times. I know they've stopped me in his vehicle before wearing a baseball hat and a hoodie. You can't see in the car, so they would even stop me while I was driving his car, and then give me some cockamamie story as to why they stopped the vehicle, and I'm gonna let you go with a warning. Warning for what? You stopped me for nothing. You thought I was my son. I told my son a long time ago, I said, baby, they're not looking at you as a man anymore. They're looking at you as revenue. You're not a man to them. You're just revenue. Every time that man got in the car, it seemed like they just stopped him, whether he was valid or not. But my son did absolutely nothing wrong. Just like Bolton, he was in his house. Just like Brianna in her house. We have so many children that were doing absolutely nothing, but they're not here today.
Yeah.
And no one is being held accountable the way they should.
That's right.
They give them these menial charges that they spend a few years in jail, and then they think that that's sufficient. No, it's not. My son did absolutely nothing wrong. He was crucified. And I will tell you, if you did a dog the way that my son was done, Peter would have been all on it. Okay? They said absolutely nothing. You know what I'm saying? So he was a loving, caring young man, very, very quiet. And he people just loved him when he came around, or when he wasn't around. People always, we're Philando. But you know what happened to him was wrong on so many levels. So many levels.
Truly.
Here, you know, where do we go from here when your honesty and your integrity don't mean nothing?
Mm.
He said, sir, he respected this guy's authority. He said, sir, I must tell you there's a weapon in the car. But at the same time, he's in motion because you just asked for his identification.
Right.
So he's in motion. He's moving. His wallet is in his back pocket. You understand? So what would make a person think that this man would jeopardize the health and welfare of a woman and a child? Come on, somebody, help me out right now. What would make you think that a man don't care about this woman and this baby?
Yeah.
And we're going to point that out. He was not even charged at shooting in that car with no regards to human life. But then you look at the Breonna Taylor's case, he shot in them people's apartment and they gave him some type of charge for that. My immediate thought was, there must be some white folks. There must have been some white folks' apartment, and they was, you know, causing a stink about that. You shot in my apartment. What if my grandchild was in there? Yada, yada, yada. I already know the business. So, but he got a charge for that.
Yeah. Yeah. We only have a limited amount of time left, and I want to.
Yeah, girl, I go on and on. I'm sorry, girl. Go ahead.
I, you know, do not apologize, because I wish we had the time to let you. Both of you are so powerful, so passionate, and I want to make sure that our viewers have a chance to tap into some of that power, because nobody would have blamed you if you didn't choose the path of activism, if you didn't choose to turn your pain into power, but you did for the sake of our communities. Let us know, unfortunately, just a kind of a minute or less for each of you, what keeps you going and what can we look to keep us going in such a time of fear and uncertainty? Ms. John, I'll come to you, and Ms. Castille will end with you.
Yeah, well, Brittany, my son died with all of his energy at 26 years old. And I am propelled to exert the energy that he still left. So when he died, and the way in which he died, the unjust way in which he died, I felt that no other family should have to go through what I went through, what my family went through. Actually, we created the Botham Jean Foundation, and the first objective of the foundation was to assist families who have been impacted by police brutality and by racism. And so we reach out to these people because we actually try to do what Botham would have done had he been alive today.
Yes.
So it's really his energy that keeps me going. I just know that I must stand for him. I must fight for him, and I must fight for other Black men and women who have been impacted by the injustice that we're seeing through the systems of police brutality and white supremacy.
And we'll keep going for him. Ms. Castille, take us home. What can keep you going? What can keep us going?
Yeah, I have a lot of faith. And like I said, we're all spirits going through a human experience. And I know my son's spirit is still here. He just not in the flesh. So my work is done through him. You know, I am following the leadership of our Lord and the spirit of my son and the ancestors. So I'm just piggybacking off Bolton's mom, because we do the same thing. We reach out to families that have lost their loved one through gun violence as well. And my son, like I said, paid out of his pockets those children's lunches. So we help reduce the negative lunch balances at our schools, because that balance can get up to $300,000 per district. So we're not talking about a little bit of money, but we do what we can to relieve some of that stress off of our families, because we going through so much. It's so much, and then you have to worry about a lunch debt. These are the future leaders of this country. And the least the government can do is, feed the kids. You can't concentrate and you hungry. So that's what our foundation does. And we, involved in advocating for police reform and policy changes. July the 6th, 2020, the Minnesota driver's manual was updated with information about gun ownership, what you should expect from the police and what the police should expect from you when you have a weapon in the car. Because we don't need another Valerie Castille. We don't need another Breonna Taylor. Now y'all got me going right now. This stuff, it gets me hyped up, but I ain't gonna do nothing but bring you the truth in the raw. I'm not gonna sit up and sugarcoat nothing, but my faith is strong. And the support of my community keeps me going as well. Without them, I couldn't do nothing, and the easiest thing I could have done was to do nothing. But that's not what God had intended for me.
Indeed. Well, we promise you that we will continue to commit the energy and the power that Botham and Philando call us into and stand with you. Thank you so much for your time, for your energy, and for the gift of your presence tonight.
Thank you.
Now
Thank you
I
for
have
having me.
Thank you for being with us. Now I have the distinct privilege to introduce our next guest, Tanya Lewis Lee. Tanya is an incredible mother, just like the last two you saw. She's also an incredible advocate for mothers. Tanya is one of the world's foremost experts on the topic of maternal and infant health and is an activist for challenging the racism embedded in our healthcare system. And COVID is teaching us a whole lot about just that. She's a film and television producer, an author, an entrepreneur, an advocate for women and infant health. And I'm sure that she will be able to help us continue to expand this conversation to understand the impact of Black pain and trauma and to understand the importance of self-care as a tool to combat it. Please help me welcome Tanya Lewis Lee. Well, now you've gotten a sneak peek of our last guest, but I think we're waiting on Tanya. There we go. Oh, great. We get to have both of you at the same time. For those of you who don't know our other esteemed guest, Dr. Joy DeGruy is the author of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, which addresses the residual impacts of trauma on African descendants in the Americas. So since we've got you both here on screen, I'd love to just have a bit of a sister chat with both of you. If you are watching and are in the comments, please feel free to type your questions for both Dr. DeGruy and Tanya. We would love to make sure that you are a part of this conversation. Tanya, I'd like to start with you. And you heard me give one of my very favorite quotes at the beginning of this from Audre Lorde, because I recognize that radical self-love is a revolutionary act for Black people and for Black women who Zora Neale Hurston said are the mules of the world. We carry everybody's load, including our own, and that can wreak havoc on us. Unfortunately, it can cause so much pain. So I want to ask you, what conversations have you found are necessary, given all of these images that we are seeing, the consistency of our pain that is being put right there on our phones and on the television screen? How are you having conversations with Black women about how to stay well in this moment?
Right. Well, first of all, Brittany, so good to see you. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for that conversation before with Ms. Jean and Ms. Castille. And that is that Audre Lorde quote is one of my all-time favorites because it is absolute truth. And when you ask about the kind of conversations I'm having, I think amongst Black women, it's about how are you taking care of yourself through all of this. I have been talking for some time now about being Army fit. Like even before we got to this place, because we are in a war. This is war, you know, just living, existing in America, Black in America, to be productive, to be able to be functional and really make things happen is working against the machine.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, we need to be strong, physically, mentally, spiritually, and it's not a joke. It's not a throwaway. And it's about figuring out, how do we get there? What does it mean? What does it mean to eat well? What does it mean to really exercise well for you? You know, it's not one size fits all. It's not about what you look like. What you look like is really a secondary. And if you're taking good care of yourself and you're worried about getting down to a size, you'll get to the size that you're supposed to be. It doesn't matter. The question I have is, when someone says run, can you do that? Can you run? And if you can't, you can start working towards getting to that place, hopefully, you know, and learn to take care of yourself so you can help take care of others. You know, I think that's the spiritual piece, realizing that taking care of yourself means that maybe someone else doesn't have to take care of you, means that maybe you can lend a hand to somebody else.
Yes.
You know, being mentally well is about being able to make good decisions quickly in a chaotic situation. You know, so all of these things are not about being, you know, hippy dippy or, you know, it's about really, how are you going to function and take your place, live out your purpose, and do the work you're supposed to be doing.
I love this idea of Army Fit. And Dr. DeGruy, I'm going to come to you because you have over 30 years of practical experience in helping us understand exactly what this war is and what we need to be prepared for, right? This idea of post-traumatic slave syndrome is rooted in the fact that our suffering has impacted us across generations. And you and your work, you focus on the intersection of racism, trauma, and violence, and of course, American chattel slavery. So help us historicize this war that, as Tanya says, we need to be Army fit for. What is the multi-generational manifestation of that post-traumatic slave syndrome that we need to be ready for right now in this moment?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I feel extraordinarily humbled by everyone and all the comments. And as a Black mother, as a Black grandmother, as a Black woman, it hits me squarely as it does everyone else. Part of my work is about really believing that when people know better, they can do better. And what we don't always understand is how we arrived at where we are. And sometimes that lens helps us navigate it. So if we understand, for example, as I was listening to these mothers speak about their sons, I am immediately thrown into the dehumanization of Black people, the whole idea of anti-Blackness that has spawned generations, that begins with actually looking at Chief Justice Taney in 1857, arguing whether Black people were to be included in We the People. You see, but we were 3/5 human. We weren't fully human and were not perceived that way. But there was something that he said that I think crystallizes so much. He said that the Black man has no rights, which a white man is bound to respect. Stay with me. We have no rights that a white man is bound to respect. And then we understand that from that notion of our lack of humanity came laws, legislation, and terrorism, racial terrorism, which came from that. Policing comes from slave patrols. Slave patrols were designed to intimidate and harm and intimidate and do all the things that they do. And so we have to understand that. And then we have to recognize that our people, we're standing on strong shoulders. You see, we're standing on people who had to live through that and far more. And so I know we're built mentally, emotionally, and spiritually to deal with this. But again, being war ready, being ready to champion this, to lean in wherever you are. What I appreciate is we're all in different lanes. The fact that we're on this apparatus and you are helping us through it is your lane. And you see, everyone needs to stand in their lane and do their part. Don't do me, do you, because God's giving you something to do. And so it's about us all showing up, which we've always had to do.
Yeah.
And this too shall pass. We will make it through this. I know, given the shoulders I'm standing on, we will make it through this. But we got to know and understand how we've been harmed so that we don't harm.
So that we don't harm, right? That is everything, such that we are not passing on the things that we have internalized and learned through habit because we haven't actually examined them, right? Tanya, I want to come back to you. I mean, there's so many quotables, right? We're talking about Army Fit. Dr. DeGruy, you said, don't do me, do you. That needs to be a t-shirt, a bumper sticker, like a book cover, everything. But doing ourselves, right, and standing in our own lane requires that we actually give ourselves the mental energy and the focus and attention that we deserve. And let's keep it a buck, as my generation says. Black women don't do that very well. We put everybody else in front of us. It's the kids, it's mom and dad, it's our spouses, it's our church or our synagogue, it's our block, it's the mutual aid society we run. I mean, we are showing up for everybody else's struggle, even though often a lot of people are not showing back up for us. So how would you advise Black women to start the process of making that mental shift to start getting Army fit, to start getting war ready? Because some folks, sometimes we're just standing in our own way. I mean, I can tell you right now, I probably need to go upstairs and exercise as soon as this call is over. So tell me how I make the mental transition so that I can get on the road to being ready.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's not always easy, right? It's work is what it is. It's work, it's discipline, it's getting into a practice. It is realizing that the world's not going to end if you give yourself a half hour, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation, whether it's going for a run, that you are better off if you give yourself a moment. Yeah. Everyone can wait at least a half hour, right, for you to be able to pour, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And eventually what happens is you run yourself so far down that you can't any longer take care of anybody else.
Yeah.
You know, so you really do, if you really want to be that for everyone, you really do have to take care of everybody. And I do want to just mention something, because you did mention my maternal health advocacy, and I've been doing a lot of work, and I just want to say that, and not to add trauma, because we're being hit from every direction. Yeah. But the maternal mortality rates are so high unnecessarily for Black women, you know. And I think it's just so interesting, as mothers, we're hit from every direction. And I just want to mention it because I don't want Black women to fear giving birth. But what I want us all to know going in, that as Black women, as we think about whether it's just how we take care of life in general, or as we're about to give birth, that we should be the center of that. We should be the ones calling the shots about the kind of care that we really want. And then everybody else should be working to give us the kind of care that we need. And I just wanted to mention the maternal mortality piece, because I think it's important also to have that in the conversation.
It absolutely is. And I'm so glad that you did, because this actually brings me to what I want to ask Dr. DeGruy about, the things that we need to disrupt so that we don't pass them on intergenerationally. I was actually just having a conversation with my girlfriends about our own struggles and journey around our own parenthood. So my husband and I are coming up on a year. We're going to be meeting with a fertility specialist soon, because I'm in my 30s and I'm trying to understand what my options are so that I can advocate for myself in this space that I know is so often hostile to people like us, and so often doesn't listen to people like us. But assuming and prayerfully everything goes in the direction that we hope it will, we'll be responsible for one of those souls, as Ms. Castille was saying, that is existing in a human experience. And we want to make sure that we are doing everything we possibly can to raise a beautiful, loving, powerful, confident Black child. And we know that means that we have to unlearn and undo some things in ourselves. So what does that process look like, Dr. DeGruy? How do we disrupt that cycle and start to do that unlearning for ourselves and for future generations?
Well, first of all, I think you're going to be all right. Okay, you're
We're
very
working on it.
you're going to advocate. You're going to take care of yourself. Please pass that along to others who may not have that perspective. And what you're speaking about, I have to honor my brother Howard Stevenson, who talked about this whole notion of intentional positive racial socialization. Let me say that again. Positive racial socialization. That's intentional and deliberate. So let me give you an opposite of positive racial socialization. It's racist socialization. And racist socialization is when you hear people say stuff like, "Oh my God, she was so pretty, even though she's dark." He was so attractive. He was light-skinned and had good hair. Or you begin to look at folks who don't trust, will not embrace other Black people because, there's a fundamental assumption. That's negative racist socialization, which we're bombarded with. So I ask the audience right now, just for a moment, to close your eyes. I'm gonna give you a scene. You're driving in your car. You see police lights, several cars parked, yellow tape. You look beyond the yellow tape. There are 3 young men on their knees. Their hands are handcuffed behind them, and they don't have shirts on. Now open your eyes. That's our problem, what you saw. The problem is we've been socialized to believe those pictures that we're consistently shown. So we have to show up with some other pictures. You following me? The media bombards us with those images that reinforce this notion that there's something wrong with us. What we have to do is bombard our families, our children, our community with those images, which are much, much more real of who we are as a people. You see, you then confound those images because you have kids that come out and go, "I know who I am. I'm clear. I don't care what you pull out there," which means that we have to be deliberate and intentional about what our children are seeing, what they're reading, what we have in their environment. Now, mind you, I have been around a lot of people that are struggling, but you don't get to spew that poison in my environment. I love you a whole lot. I work with you, but you don't get to show up here with that. Are you following me? And this is hard to do because sometimes it's in the family. Sometimes it's close, but we cannot. And again, I'm not leaving you alone, but I'm not letting you injure. I may work with you separately, but I can't allow you to cause injury because of yours. And at the same time, I'm not condemning you for that injury.
Yeah.
You see, so we have to be very deliberate and intentional. And I want to take from that statement that our beloved sister said, that I'm going to take the energy my son had left. I'm going to take that energy that he had left, and I'm going to go on and I'm going to do good. Because you see, when you don't do good, you rob the world of goodness. And so we have to replace all of those negative imageries, those thoughts, those behaviors, those beliefs, all of those things with what is true and real. And again, that's something we can all do wherever we are, to love our children in a way that they recognize, first of all, they are the center. They are the beginning, right? We know that all DNA leads back to Africa, all DNA.
So this has already been such a powerful conversation. We've got some questions from the audience. If you've got a question, make sure to type yours into the comments, no matter the platform on which you are watching. This first question, I think, is so incredible. The question is, how do you all honor your internal dialogue for personal development? Now, I'm sure that you have spent a lot of time on panels and in lecture halls, especially in this Zoom world. But that can often not leave time for the places that you want to grow and evolve and learn. So how do you honor your internal dialogue for personal development? Either of you can take that first.
Well, I love what Dr. DeGroot was just talking about. I mean, we do have to stay in our own lane and live our purpose, right? And I think for me, I really do hear that inner dialogue that's driving me to do the things that I do, that has driven me to the place that I am, so that today, where I'm sitting exactly where I'm supposed to be sitting, doing exactly what it is I'm supposed to be doing. I know the work that I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it is an amazing feeling. And I think it's about really paying attention to what's important to me and not listening to other people, trusting myself more than I do others. And I think, you know, I'm older now. So, you know, you learn that as you get older to trust yourself more and more. And you finally realize, like, nobody else knows any better than I do about what's right for me. And again, as we were talking before, if I'm doing what's right for me, then it's going to be what's right for everybody else around me.
Yeah, I love that. I was just talking to a young woman named Gabby Forbes, she's a Black high school senior organizer, just this brilliant, energetic young woman. And at 17 years old, she was talking about making sure that she didn't allow other people to plant seeds of their doubt in her vision. And I was just like, if I had it figured out at 17, the way she does right now, I'd be further along, right? Because it has taken time to learn this. Dr. DeGrew, how do you honor that internal dialogue for yourself?
For me, and I think, and again, it gets said because we are a village. We truly are a village. I think I have a spiritual base, a very strong spiritual base. And I believe that I can be still and I can connect to myself, the joy that I'm trying to build, the joy that I try to grow. And I do believe that's important, is to put it in your mind that so long as you have breath in your body, you can grow and learn.
Yeah.
I also garden and I go fishing. Okay. I will just keep it real. That is what I do. And I take care of myself. I love being in my garden. I love growing things. I love fishing. People have said to me, God, I'd love to go fishing with you. I'm going, that's a different joy. You may not want to go because it's not about you. Okay. That's what happens. But again, in echoing that whole idea that, you know, you have to know who you are. And I think on a real important end note, you know, when I was a child, my mother and both my parents are gone. But I remember I would be whining about something or I'd ask something. And my mother would say to me, because it was just something I wanted. And she said, you know, I used to cry because I had no shoes until I met a man who had no feet. And so I think we have to appreciate where we are and who we are. We have to appreciate Oprah saying, you may not want to be born a girl anywhere else in the world. You know, understanding what we do have, what we have gained, what we have been able to do, and to be real clear about that and to be grateful for that, right? And again, tomorrow I live another day for the struggle, but I also live another day to uplift and to heal.
Yeah. I think that is such a powerful way to close. It reminds me actually of one of my favorite affirmations to constantly remind myself that I had a purpose before anyone had an opinion. Thank you both so much for living in your purpose so powerfully that it shines on all of us. Thank you to Tanya Lewis Lee. Thank you to Dr. Joy DeGrew. Thank you to Valerie Castille and Ms. Allison Jean for sharing your brilliance and your wisdom during this beloved community talk. And thank you to each of you who tuned in, who chimed in, who were a part of this continuously growing community. We are because you are, and we want to make sure that you will continue to stand up and make your voices heard. So make sure that you vote by November the 3rd, not on November the 3rd necessarily, but by November the 3rd, because baby, we are in an election season. It's no longer just an election day. Make sure that you complete your census, because if we are not counted, so many resources that our communities need and deserve will not reach us. It just takes 5 minutes. Make sure that you complete your census by October the 31st. Most importantly, make sure that you come back and you join the next Beloved Community Talk on October the 20th. You can register for that conversation. It is completely free, and you can register at belovedcommunitytalks.org. I'm Brittany Packnett Cunningham. I'm thankful for the gift of life, and I'm thankful for another opportunity to choose fortitude over fatalism and to choose the discipline of hope over the ease of cynicism. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all you do. Have a great night. Let's go get free.